No. Today we'll speak about Aron, the Kohen, and his involvement with the golden calf. Why he got involved and how he got involved. What level of how grave and what level, what extent was his sin. And answer the burning question as to why God allowed someone who was involved in the golden calf to be one of the greatest leaders of the Jewish people, the first high priest. And this is connected with this week's Torah portion, because in this week's Torah portion, the Jewish people are about to enter the land of Israel, and Moshe is repeating to them the occurrences that happened in the past 39 years. And Moshe repeats to the Jewish people the occurrences that happened throughout the past 39 years. And one of the things he mentions in this week's parsha is where Hashem became upset with Aron for being involved in the golden calf. So let's begin on page 106, text 1a. Let's begin with the blessing of the Torah. Baruch atah asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch. Amen.
Amen.
So let's begin text 1a, page 106. U'ba'aharon, and with Aharon, God was very furious to destroy him, so I prayed also for Aron at that time. Aron was the brother of Moshe, of Moses, and Moses prayed to save Aron from being harmed or punished by Hashem with the penalty of death. Now, Rashi explains, how did Hashem destroy him, Aron? Look at text 1b, to destroy him. Zeh kiloi banim. This refers to the destruction of his children. Similarly, it says, and I destroyed his fruit from above. So Hashem planned to punish Aron by killing his children, by taking the life of his children. So I prayed also for Aron, says Moshe, and my prayer succeeded to atone for half. Why for half? Because 2 of Aaron's sons did actually pass away. Thus only 2 of his sons died and 2 remained alive. So we're quoting Rashi, and Rashi's of the opinion that how was Aron punished for the sin of the golden calf? Through losing 2 of his children. Of course, Rashi is not the only opinion, and we have Rabbi Yitzchak Abarbanel. And what does Abarbanel write? Go ahead, 1c.
My view on this matter is that Moses and Aaron were both punished for the sins they had committed. Aaron was punished for the sin of the calf. If so, the waters of strife were just a tool for the matter, not allowing Moses and Aaron to enter Eretz Yisrael, but not the ultimate reason.
If we notice, there's 2. Moshe and Aaron both never entered the land of Israel. We know why was Moshe not allowed to enter the land of Israel on the most basic level. It's because he hit the rock instead of speaking to the rock. According to the Abarbanel, the reason why Aron wasn't allowed into the Eretz Yisrael was because the sin of the golden calf. The children of his, that his children passed away, was his children sin. And that's why, or their sacrifices, that's why their lives were taken. But Aaron's punishment was because of his involvement in the golden calf. But however you see it, we see that everyone agrees, it's clear in the Torah, that Aron, Hashem was upset with Aron for sinning with the golden calf. So, 2 questions arise. How could it be that Aron, who was then the substitute leader of the Jewish people, when Moshe went on the mountain for 40 days, how is it possible that Aaron led or helped, was involved with the Jewish people in creating this golden calf? And so question number 2 is, if he sinned, why did Hashem give him the greatest opportunity of being the first Kohen Gadol, the first high priest in the Holy Temple? Such a high role of leadership. So let's look back at the episode of the golden calf and see really what took place. Mendy, text 2a.
When the people saw that Moshe was late in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered against Aaron, and they said to him, "Come on, make us gods that will go before us, because this man Moshe, who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we don't know what has become of him."
So the Jewish people were waiting for Moshe Rabbeinu to come down. And why did they feel that there was a delay? Because Moshe said, "I'll be back in 40 days." The problem is they counted the day he left. So the day he left was part of the count of 40, but really the day he left wasn't part of the count. So it's 40 days from the next day, from the next morning. And that's how long it took. It took another half a day, or 24 hours, for when they prepared the golden calf till Moshe came. So Moshe came 40 days later, but they miscalculated. And what was their feeling when Moshe didn't come? What happened? What did they think? Text 2b. Look at the Eben Ezra. Go ahead, Ed.
They thought that Moses had died. He had been there for 40 days, and it's not humanly possible to live without food for this amount of time.
So, the Jewish people had a leader that left them. They thought that he's gone. So, thinking that the leader's gone, they were in a tumult. They didn't know what to do. The heir of Rav, who were some non-sincere converts that clinging to the Jewish people when they left Egypt, they were the hotshot, leaving Egypt in such fanfare. They decided to join along. They left Egypt with them. They got the Torah with the Jewish people. They were, but they weren't sincere, and they didn't commit to Judaism. And now they gave their opinion of what to do. So they said, let's create an idol that we're going to worship. Now, of course, we're going to try to look at a couple of layers of understanding this, but it's clear that they were involved in this, the heir of Rav, and people, we always seem to be taking advice from some other. Someone's close friend who's an expert gives advice. We seem to not know how to listen, but as soon as it's a stranger, we seem to listen. So the Jewish people took the advice of the heir of Rav. And as they created this golden calf, or they wanted to create it, there were some protesters. One of them was Moshe's nephew, Miriam's son. His name was Hur. And what happened to Hur? Text 3, Hur, his nephew, who was trying to object to this behavior, they stopped him and they killed him. So now Aron was in a dilemma. He knew that he was going to be consulted as to how they should behave. What should he do? What should the Jewish people do? How should he respond? So Aron, let's see what the Torah says, and we'll see how to justify Aaron's behavior. Text 4.
Aaron said to them, "Remove the golden earrings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons and your daughters, and bring them to me."
So there's a few things to point out over here. Number 1, Aron says, "Give me the gold of your wives and children." Number 2, another thing to point out, is that Aron says, "Bring them to me," as opposed to "give them to me," which will make a difference later. So now what happened when Aron said, give me the gold of your wives? He planned, he hoped that the women would be stubborn in giving their jewelry to partake of this disastrous idea. And guess what? The women were against it. And hoping to stall for time, Aron said, ask your wives to give the jewelry. And that way we can create the image, this golden calf. And the people, realizing their wives didn't want to give it, they gave their own jewelry. So the stalling for time didn't help, because the Jewish people gave their own stuff. So they had the material, they came back to Aron, and they had the stuff. All the stuff ready. Let's read this and we'll take your questions. That's 5a.
And Aaron saw many things. He saw how his sister's son Hur reproved the Israelites and was assassinated. He also saw and said, if they build the altar, one will bring the pebbles and another will bring a stone. Thus their work will be done all at once. But if I build it and am lazy with my work, meanwhile Moshe will arrive.
So Aron said, bring it to me, I'll do it. And if I do it, if I go against you, I know you'll kill me, just like you killed my nephew. But if I make as if I'm with you, and then just take my time doing it, then I know Moshe will already come, the problem will be solved.
The question is, when you say the Jewish people, you're only referring to the men. When you say the Jewish people did this.
Yeah, it's known that, correct, it's known that most of the Jewish people did sin, and minorities didn't. We know the Shevet Levi, the Kohanim and the Levim didn't sin. And yeah, the women took a little part, or no part, in the story and the Chet Egel. It's true.
But I hear you and others saying a lot of times the Jewish people.
That's the way, in general, when we say, it's like my family, right? I say my family. Your family, you have to say the 3 kids weren't born yet when you say your family, because you're saying a story from 4 years ago. The way you talk is to say the Jewish people, the majority, and then when you want to say exclusion, you say exclusion. So I'm saying, when you look at details, you'll see that it wasn't all the Jewish people, but once it's 51%, we say the Jewish people. That's the way it goes.
Okay. Just clarifying.
That's no problem. Very good. Let's look at what Aron said after they brought him their own jewelry without this delay. So he said like this. Vayomer Chag LaHashem Mocher. And he said, tomorrow will be a feast to God. V'loy hayoim, but not today. He made sure not to say today. He said, tomorrow there will be a feast for God. Shema Yavai Moshe Koidim Sheyavidu. And the reason why he said, tomorrow we'll make a celebration, is because he was hoping by tomorrow, they'll wake up late, Moshe will come, and everything will be fine. What happened? The Jewish people woke up extra early. And when he woke up, the Jewish people were already sitting and serving the golden calf. So Aron originally said, ask your wives to give me the jewelry. Ask your children to give me the jewelry. That didn't go well. They themselves gave their jewelry. Aron said, let's celebrate tomorrow. And he hoped tomorrow will start a day will start a little late or whatever. They're not going to wake up extra late to do this. And Moshe will come. What happened? In the morning, they started extra early to serve this idol. And a lot more sinning went on there. And then in the afternoon, Moshe came. Or late morning, Moshe came. So that didn't work. So let's look. So just to look at Aron, we see he had good intentions. He definitely had good intentions to try to avoid for the Jewish people sinning. But at the end of the day, he was involved and he didn't stop and he didn't object to what they were doing. So let's look. So we're back to our question, how could Aron be the Kohen Gadol? How could Hashem appoint Aron to be the Kohen Gadol when he was involved in this sin? So let's learn a little bit about idol worship, and let's see text 6a. Go ahead, Elliot.
Alright. The idol of an idolater is not prohibited until it is worshipped, but if it belonged to an Israelite, it is prohibited immediately. From where does he derive that the idol of an Israelite is prohibited immediately? It is stated, "And I took your sin, the calf which you had made. From the moment it was made, it came within the category of sin."
So, when a non-Jew creates an idol, the idol itself has nothing worth of punishment. It hasn't yet earned or gained, or it doesn't have the title idol until it's served
It's like a sitter.
when a non-Jew uses it. In that case, yeah. But when a Jew creates an idol, that itself is problematic. Just by creating the idol, it's a problem. As opposed to a non-Jew, it's only a problem once it's served. So Aron was involved in creating the idol. There's already a sin on his part. Let's look at text 6b. Go ahead, Ed.
Here at the time Aron had made it, they had not yet worshipped the calf. Nevertheless, it is evident from the Talmud that an idol is considered sinful and occurs from the moment of its creation. One is compelled to say so, inasmuch as it has been stated explicitly in the Ten Commandments, "You shall not make a graven image."
So, based on these two texts, we clearly see that just creating an image that's an idol is a problem. So let's just look at our screen just to... Let's look at Aron's options. Either he can oppose them and get killed, or he could join them and stall for time. And he said, let's do it tomorrow. But he still turned out to be the Kohen Gadol, even though he's involved in this scheme. So to really see, was he halachically allowed to do this? Was he allowed to be involved in a sin in order to stall for time? Which means he kind of, if we're going to say halachically it is permitted or not permitted, we want to understand is if someone's in a situation where the Torah prohibits a certain thing or a certain act, but can we ever justify doing an act that's not so Torah allowed for the sake of some other purpose? So obviously we're going to get into halacha now, and because halacha is so complex, we have to make sure that we don't take this out of context. And for example, many people, when creating an atmosphere in order to draw Jewish people closer to Judaism, they will change and cause compromise to the Torah in order to make people comfortable. And what does Aron say? Aron says, draw people close to the Torah, but don't draw the Torah close to them. Drawing people close to the Torah means the Torah stays put. But drawing people closer to the Torah means the Torah stays put. But bringing the Torah to people means you're compromising the Torah in order to bring it to the people. Obviously, meaning at the end of the day, we know just from this week's Parsha and from other places that Hashem was upset with Aron. So obviously, what he did wasn't A-okay. The question is, in a halachic viewpoint, was his judgment halachically okay or not? So let's try to give something here. And it's not like we're going to come to a complete conclusion, but just to bring some clarity to this idea. Okay. So there's a concept that you see on the board, which is in text 7, which reads as like this. it's better for a reliable practitioner of tithing law to do a light prohibition so that an uneducated consumer will not do a great prohibition. What is this referring to? The scenario is such. A person has a field in Missoula, and he needs to separate 10% of his produce to give to the Kohen. Now this is not practiced today, even if you own a field in Missoula, because you only tithe produce right now you'll tithe if your field was in Eretz Yisrael, you would tithe. But considering that Missoula is in Eretz Yisrael, and considering that you had a Kohen to give it to, so you tithe your produce to give to a Kohen and a Levi from your field in Missoula. And you have a field in Kalispell, so you give to the Kohen and Levi in Kalispell, you give them their share. Now what is a problem if someone buys your produce without you ever tithing it? That's a grave sin, because someone's eating literally non-kosher produce. Non-kosher produce because the produce wasn't tithed. All you got to do is tithe it. It's like challah. What's challah really mean? The mitzvah of challah is that whenever you make a certain amount of dough, 5 pounds of flour, or even less, you need to separate challah. And that challah needs to be given to the kohen, and today we don't have the structure to give it to, so we burn it. We destroy it. But the point is, it's not yours. It has to be separated. So that's challah. It's challah being separated. So if someone made great looking challah, great tasting challah, but never separated the challah, although its ingredients are kosher, is not kosher. All they have to do is remove a piece of dough, and that will be kosher. So both fields in Missoula and Kalispell need to be tithed. The problem is, you're currently in Missoula, and your field in Kalispell already went to stores. The produce, your employees already gave it to other stores. So you're in trouble. What do you do now? So one of the things you could do, before things get to people, is you tithe in Missoula for Kalispell. That means you take, okay, I know I have 1,000 apples in Kalispell, so I'll separate 1/10 in Missoula, and I'll have 100 apples right here in Missoula, and this will be to the Kohen and the Levi on behalf of those apples. Now, that biblically can be done. Rabbinically should not be done. But it should be done in a case where the produce in Kalispell is already in trouble. So though you're not allowed to make it life easy and say, okay, listen, I know altogether I have 2,000 apples, I'm going to separate 200 right here. No, you have to separate 100 here and 100 there. That's what you have to do. But if, for whatever reason, a problem happened and it's already out, and you need to tithe it ASAP, and you can, so you're allowed to tithe 100 apples on behalf of the apples in Kalispell in order to prevent someone from eating non-kosher apples. So that's, if you look back at text 7, let's look at it again to make it make sense. It's better for a reliable practitioner of those who tithe to do a light prohibition so that an uneducated consumer will not do a great prohibition. So better the owner do a light prohibition of separating tithes from in Missoula on behalf of a field in Kalispell than consumers eating non-kosher food. So if that's the case, then perhaps we can shed some light on Aron. What did Aron do? He tried to prevent people from serving an idol. How? By creating an idol in a slow pace.
So you're saying like once...
What was Aaron's sin, by the way? Serving it? No, he didn't serve the idol.
Creating it.
Creating it.
Sin.
Exactly. Right. Creating it, we said. Exactly. For a number of reasons. And creating it was a problem. So why did he create it? In order to prevent the serving of it. He created it in order to prevent others from serving it. If he would have not created it, it would have been created earlier and it would have been worshipped. Right? At the end, it didn't help. But we're thinking in his mindset, by him creating it, and stalling for time, he would have prevented people from observing it. That's the logic we want to give. So before we answer this question, let's look at a few practical questions from other scenarios in such situations. Oh, similar situations. This is a very interesting one. Text 8a. Text 8a. Who would like to read?
So,
On Shabbat, an observant Jew receives a phone call from a Jew who doesn't normally observe Shabbat and will, in all likelihood, dial several more times if his call isn't answered. Is it permitted to answer the phone, thereby violating the Shabbat once, so as to prevent repeated violation by another person?
What do you think about this question? Does it make sense for the observant Jew to pick up the phone, buddy, stop calling, I'm not going to pick up the phone anymore, and basically not allow and not cause his friend, so to speak,
Because
his
you're
friend
going to
to
create an
continue.
exception for an exception.
So let's see. Fine, that's one question. We'll get to it. Next question is text 8b. You are a paramedic. You're on an emergency call on Shabbos. Obviously, like Mendy just pointed out, you're allowed to, and you have to go into the car, drive, and help save that, or even perhaps save that life. What if the following scenario happens? The dispatcher receives notice that everything is fine. So now the guy is 10 minutes away from his location. So the dispatcher calls. Is he allowed to call the paramedic who's driving for no reason? Say, buddy, you don't have to go. It's fine. The guy's driving, and he's driving to save a life. The dispatcher gets notice that the victim is fine, so the driving is for no purpose. Can he call, and therefore violate Shabbos, by calling in order to help stop violating the Shabbos of this person who continues to drive? Next thing, let's look at this question. Someone asked Rabbi Oberlander if Chabad Shluchim are really allowed to move to small communities when they lose the opportunity of davening with the minyan. And what's the purpose of them moving out to another community? In order to help others grow in their Judaism. But they're still causing themselves to lose out on the mitzvah of davening with the minyan. So are you allowed to do that?
Well, the answer there is obviously yes.
Right, the question to all of these is really not, is it yes or no? Because if you do guess yes or no, you might get some right and some wrong. The question is yes and no, yes or no, and why? What are the parameters? What are the conditions for all these things? So let's look at what Tosfos says. Let's look at text 9. I'll read. If the serious prohibition has not yet been violated, then it is better to do the lesser prohibition and thereby keep his fellow away from the serious prohibition. So there, Tosfos makes a distinction between was it yet violated or has it yet begun. But when the violation has already been committed, let it be done and do not actively transgress even a minor violation. That's premise number 1. Now there's an interesting story, and this is not for the interesting story about Rabbi Yehuda, who says anyone who frees a Canaanite slave transgresses a positive mitzvah. Certain cases are different. As it is explained with regard to Rabbi Elazar's behavior. Rabbi Elazar once entered a shul and did not find 10 people for minyan. Now, I'm reading out of text for a moment. The concept of a Canaanite slave is that he's semi-Jewish while he's your slave. He's born not Jewish, but because you brought him into your home, he has to abide by the 7 Noahide laws and keep all the mitzvahs, negative mitzvahs. So he has to live a semi-Jewish life. He's not allowed to be freed. He has to be yours forever. And that's another discussion. But if you do free him, he becomes completely Jewish. and he has to fulfill all the mitzvahs. So he had 9 people in the shul, and his home was right next door. He had his Canaanite slave right next door. If he frees him, he does lose the value, even the monetary value of that, and the prohibition of freeing a slave. Not the prohibition, but the lack of a mitzvah, or you lose the mitzvah, part of the mitzvah. And that's what he did. He freed his Canaanite slave, and then his Canaanite slave became a complete Jew, and he was the 10th man for the minyan. How was he allowed to do that? He allowed himself to lose a mitzvah in order to create a minyan. You're not allowed to lose a mitzvah to create to help another mitzvah. That's not the way Torah works. So why was he allowed to do that? And the reason is for the second criteria is the reason for this is because it is different when by freeing him the public will be enabled to do a mitzvah. So the two ideas that Tosfos is sharing is number one, that the violation, when you're allowed to commit a small violation to help prevent a larger violation, when the larger violation has not yet begun. Or, number two, when the violation helps serve, the small violation helps serve the benefit of the public. So let's look at our questions that we had to take Tosfos and apply it to the 3 questions that we had. What was our first question? Is the person allowed to pick up the phone on Shabbos in order to prevent the caller from calling again and again and again? So text 8a, continuing from previous 8a. Since he has already started the violation, it is prohibited to save him from further violation by transgressing another prohibition. So the caller already called. He already began calling. So you're not allowed to be involved and prevent him from doing more by you picking the phone once in order to prevent him from calling a number of times, because he already began. Once he began, you're not allowed to even transgress something small. Now again, this is a halachic discussion, and halach is very, very large, and nothing we say is limited or black and white to this discussion. To take it to other areas. Text 8b. What was our second question?
About the paramedic.
Very good, about the paramedic. Is the paramedic allowed? Is the dispatcher allowed to call the paramedic, tell him we're okay, you don't have to continue driving, you can come back home?
Because he's already driving.
Because he's already driving. So here's something very interesting. When a paramedic is going to save a life, he's not breaking Shabbos. Shabbos doesn't exist. It's not like you're allowed to break Shabbos. You're never allowed to break Shabbos. For someone who's helping someone save his life, Shabbos was never broken. Shabbos doesn't exist. So right now you're not even breaking Shabbos. Because as far as you're concerned,
you're just saving a life.
You're going to save a life.
There is no Shabbos.
So there's no Shabbos until you find out, which is when you get there. So the dispatcher who knows
would be breaking Shabbos.
Will be breaking Shabbos by picking up the phone calling you. Mandy, please read 8b.
Even though his trip didn't achieve anything, he has not violated any prohibition whatsoever. Therefore, it is obvious that they should not violate Shabbos on his account.
Now, very good. What's about our last question? So first of all, are you allowed to pick up the phone? The answer is no, because the violation has already begun. Are you allowed to make the call? Is the dispatcher allowed to make the call? Nope. Why? Because there's no violation being committed. What about the no minyan and the Chabad Shliach moving out to a small community? Why is he allowed to go?
Because it serves the public.
Because it serves the public good. Now again, what's he doing? He's losing the opportunity of a mitzvah. Of a small mitzvah, of a minor mitzvah. It's not like a person has a mitzvah to daven with every day. It's a way to do a mitzvah, is davening with a minyan. Meaning one of the better ways to daven is with a minyan. It's not like, it's not. So we're not saying a person is allowed to break Shabbos in order for the help of the public. But that's fine. So now if we look back at Aron, what was Aron's What was Aron? What was he doing?
He was creating an idol.
He's creating an idol. Now, really,
To be worshipped by other Israelites.
what's the minor? What's the large sin? The large sin is worshiping an idol. There is a sin that you're not allowed to create an idol. Perhaps we can say halachically that Aron did was halachically okay because he created an idol, which is something which is minor compared to worshiping an idol, which was much more serious.
But
Now, even regarding creating an idol, just one second, even regarding creating an idol, there's actually, the mitzvah was not given until after Moshe came down. The mitzvah of creating an image.
he didn't know about it.
So I think he knew about it, but it was never punishable because it wasn't yet given. Right? Because Moshe went up 40 days to learn the Torah. The only thing they had was the Ten Commandments. In the Ten Commandments, you don't have the concept of not making. The thing we spoke about a Jew making an idol, that itself was a problem, wasn't yet given. Or it was given just to Moshe while Moshe was in heaven. But it wasn't yet passed down to the Jewish people. So although Aron apparently knew about it being a problem, it wasn't yet something which is punishable for. I'm just trying to bring out some points. But the point that we're showing here is that it was a small sin compared to a larger sin.
But shouldn't it not be permitted if it's a disservice to the public good? It's creating an idol for the public so they can participate in.
They were
sin.
planning on making an idol. The question is, are you making an idol tonight or tomorrow? So and by the way, it wasn't a question about today or tomorrow. It was, don't make an idol with or without me. But if I'm involved, then hopefully Moshe will come at a time I create it, I make it. Now the Rebbe also tried to shed some light about the story. And if you look at the actual wording of the Torah, which is all very, very important, Aron used the word, let's make Elokim. Let's make a God. This is in text 1:2a. This was in Aron. They told to Aron, let's make for ourselves a God. Now the word Elokim is not like the word Hashem. If you realize, they told Aron, let's make for ourselves a God. And what did Aron say? Tomorrow will be a celebration la Hashem. Aron used a different term. And the point is that when the Jewish people came with the Erev Rav saying, let's make for ourselves an idol, they did not say an idol. Translated in old Bibles as an idol, but it didn't mean they didn't want an idol. What did they want? They wanted a replacement of Moshe Rabbeinu. Do you know that angels are called Elokim? And kings, at times, leaders, kings are called Elokim. That's why it's in the plural. It's not talking about the one God. And it's true, Elokim does refer to God at times, but it's not a name that's specifically for God. So they said, Aseh lanu Elokim, make for us a God. They were saying, make for us a leader. Moshe died, we need another leader. Okay? And that's why when in the beginning nothing was wrong. What were they doing? Think about this for a moment. Hashem gave a mitzvah that you're not allowed to create the image that's in the Holy of Holies. What's in the Holy of Holies? A golden image of a male and female, of a baby, of a girl and a boy, or whatever. And that image is not allowed to be created anywhere else. What was that image? That was the Kruvim. Right? You guys know what I'm talking about? The Kruvim were in the Holy of Holies. Aron went only once a year, and that's where the incense was put on Yom Kippur, and that's where God spoke through these two images. Hashem gave a mitzvah, you're not allowed to create this anywhere else. Why is the mitzvah not allowed to create it anywhere else but the Holy of Holies? Because it's the holiest part in the world where God spoke through, and it's resting in the holiest place in the world in the Holy of Holies. You could think, okay, let's create an image of it in our shul. So Hashem said, no, this is only supposed to be made in the Holy of Holies. So the concept of something that's immobile and something which is the concept of something that's inanimate being, so to speak, a connection for the Jewish people and God is Jewish. It's in the Holy of Holies. It's the Kruvim. And the Jewish people, without yet having this mitzvah commanded to them, said, let's make a image that can represent our leader. Now, very Kabbalistically speaking, there's the concept of the chariot. And one of the things the Jewish people witnessed when they were waiting for Moshe was a chariot coming down from heaven. Now the chariot is the vision of Yecheskel, a very Kabbalistic idea. Now in the chariot there were four creatures. One of them was the face of a shar, Pnei Shar, the face of an ox. So they wanted to take this Kabbalistic idea of an ox and create an image of it with the golden calf. So everything was great and dandy until that morning. And what did they do? They served it as an idol. So at the end of the day, we know no one's hiding the fact that we served an idol. The question is, how did we get there? So this brings a little more light in the Rebbe's view, meaning there's many views to it, but the Rebbe's view is that, number one, they never intended on serving the idol. They intended on creating an Elikim, a leader, in order to replace Moshe. The leader was going to be an inanimate object just like it is in the Holy of Holies. And why was it an ox, a calf, in order to replicate that image that they saw in the chariot of the shar, of the ox? So everything was nice and dandy until they served it. So obviously it was a mistake all along, but their intentions were okay until, right? Not all the time do you know if something's going to turn out good, but at the end you'll know if when you started it was a good idea or not. So we now know that when they began it was a bad idea, but they had good intentions. So that's how they got involved in the sin. That's just another idea of how Moshe and how Aron got involved. He had everyone good intentions until they messed up. So now let's answer our question as to why Aron became the high priest. Why was Aron someone who was able to be the high priest? You ready? We're running a little late, so let me say some of this outside. The first encounter that Moshe had with Hashem was, first place that Moshe encountered God, burning bush. At the burning bush, Hashem said, go and take my people out of the land of Egypt. What was Moshe's response? A 7-day discussion between him and God. What was Moshe's response?
I can't speak.
I can't speak, send Aron. Send my brother. Why send my brother? Because where was Moshe? How long was he away from the Jewish people? Many, many years. Close to 80 years he was away from the Jewish people. He was 80 years old when he took them out. He ran away when he was young. Who was leading the Jewish people then? Aron. You want me to take them out? Aron is already leading them. Let him take them out. Why should I get involved and step on his toes, so to speak? Let him take them out. So what did Hashem say? You and Aron. You and Aron. How did you know Aaron's involved? Who went to Paro to speak and release the Jewish people? Moshe and Aron. Who spoke to Paro? Aron. Who spoke to Aron? Moshe. So Moshe's job was to speak to Aron. Aaron's job was to speak to Moshe. So you go to Paro and he'd tell Paro this, and he'd tell Paro that. So together, they led the Jewish people. Let's skip text 10a, text 10b, 10c. And let's go to text 12. The relationship Moshe and Aron had at the end of the day was that they treated each other as the leader. By doing so, they both took role as the leader. Together they led. Text 12. They would accord respect to one another and say to one another, "Teach me." Thus the message would emerge from the two of them as though they were both speaking. So they say, "Teach me. Tell me how to behave. Tell me how to take the Jewish people out. Tell me what to say." And this together created that they both together took the Jewish people out. Now, let's look at a fascinating idea about the character, the sole character of Moshe and of Aron. Who is Moshe deep down and who is Aron deep down? Let's look inside. The Torah says as follows. Ready? This is in Psalms. It says as follows. Chesed. What does chesed mean?
Kindness.
Ve'emes. What does emes mean?
Sure.
Truth. Kindness and truth. Nifgashu. Kindness and truth have met. Tzedek. What does tzedek mean?
Holy.
Righteous.
Righteousness. Vishalom. What does shalom mean?
Peace.
Peace. Righteousness and peace, nashaku, have kissed. What does this mean? That truth and kindness have met, and chesed and shalom emes, tzedek v'shalom, and righteousness and peace have kissed. What's the definition of? Right, there we go. Truth and righteousness could at times be opposite to kindness and peace. Those who are true, I can't give someone who's improper an act of kind. I can't be kind to someone who's improper. They don't deserve it. And sometimes righteousness doesn't lead to peace. If you're being righteous, you see what happens. Today people are being righteous and they cause chaos because they're being righteous. But with Moshe and Aron, what happened? It met. One was truth and righteousness, the other was kindness and peace. Who was who?
Aaron was the peace.
Yep. Moshe is the teacher of Torah. He's the one who gave the Torah to the Jewish people. What's Torah called? Torah's emes, the true Torah. The teacher of Torah had to be someone who's true from every angle, and therefore he was demanding. Kindness, however, is more flexible, able to bend. Let's start. Text 15. Look at the interesting detail that the Torah points out regarding the death of Aron and the death of Moshe. One word makes a world of a difference. Let's read. Text 15a. Someone read? Ed.
Oh.
The whole congregation saw that Aaron had expired, and the entire house of Israel wept for Aaron for 30 days.
So who wept?
The entire house of Israel.
In the Hebrew, Kol Beis Yisrael. What does it say, 15b? Go ahead, Brett.
And the sons of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab for 30 days, and the days of weeping over the mourning of Moses came to
Who wept for Moshe's passing?
Just the guys?
Just the guys, just the Bnei Yisrael, not Kol Yisrael. By Aron, all the Jewish people wept for 30 days. By Moshe, only some people wept for 30 days. Why not all? 15c, let's look at Rashi, who brings clarity.
Indeed.
Go ahead, Ed, Mendy.
The sons of Israel, the males wept for Moshe. However, concerning the passing of Aron, since he used to pursue peace and bring peace between a man and his fellow, and between a woman and her husband, it is said the entire house of Israel wept for him, meaning both the males and the females.
So Aron was someone who brought peace amongst male and female, amongst man and wife, amongst friend and colleague. And therefore, everyone was affected by it. He was the one who brought kindness. Why? Because he was able to... I'm going too far. Why was he the one that brought peace to the scene? Why was it he who brought peace to the scene? Because he was down to earth he wasn't he wasn't unrelatable. Like Moshe was unrelatable because he was so high, he was so true, he was so rigid, so to speak, in a good way, but still unrelatable to the people. Aron was someone who was able to communicate. He was able to talk and be understood and felt, and people felt that he understood. He was in their ballpark. And therefore, he was able to communicate with Pharaoh, and he was able to communicate with the people. He was relatable in his compassion. Moshe personified Torah, truth, and therefore he maintained a state of distance from the world. However, Aron personified kindness, and therefore he could express divinity even in a place full of lies. Based on this, it is understood why the messages that Moshe received from God to give Pharaoh had to pass through Aron. Because the trait of truth could not descend to Pharaoh's level without the help of a trait of kindness, Aaron's trait. So really, Moshe was, so to speak, incapable of communicating with Pharaoh because of the distance that was between them. Moshe was so truth, and Pharaoh was full of lies. To communicate was just impossible. So he needed Aron, who was someone who was not truth, not someone who exemplified truth, but someone who personified kindness. And therefore he was able to communicate with Pharaoh. This is something which is very interesting. Text 18a, we see about Shaul, King Shaul, who was the king before King David. It says, how come his kingdom never lasted? And you know why his kingdom never lasted? Text 18a. Go ahead, Elliot.
Why did the kingdom of Saul not endure? Because it was without any blemishes in his pedigree. For Rabbi Yochanan had said in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzadek, one should not appoint anyone as a leader of a community unless he carries a basket of bugs on his back.
So that's an interesting idea. Who's someone who's proper to be a leader? Not someone who's perfect. Because someone who's perfect may never be able to fix their misdeeds when they do make a mistake, when they're a leader. So a leader should be someone who's working on themselves to be a better person. And Aron, who's someone who was involved in the Chet Egel, or so Aron, who's someone who was able to be relatable to others, he's able to communicate with others and be understood and understand others. He was the right guy to be Kohen Gadol. Why is he the right guy to be Kohen Gadol? Because he was more down to earth and able to lead people, as opposed to Moshe, who was a different example, an example of truth, but less relatable. So, what we said in today's class was that we asked the question as to why Aron sinned at the golden calf. And if he did sin at the golden calf, why he was appointed to be the Kohen Gadol? And we addressed, number one, Aaron being someone who intended not to be part of the golden calf, just to stall for time. And another explanation we gave was, halachically speaking, perhaps he was doing a minor sin in order to prevent others from doing a larger sin. And thirdly, we explained the explanation that the Rebbe gave, that Aron, what was he doing? Not that they wanted to create a golden calf to serve initially. They wanted to create a golden calf, not as an idol, but as a substitute leader, like the Kruvim in the Holy of Holies was an intermediary between God and the Jewish people. And they wanted to create this substitute leader even though it's an inanimate object. And at the end, it was a bad idea, as we see that they sinned. But their intentions were always good. And we wanted to understand how come Aron was someone who was capable of being a Kohen Gadol. And we explained the difference between Aron and Moshe. That Aron exemplified peace. Moshe exemplified emes, truth. These two things don't necessarily, and sometimes necessarily, do not come together. And Moshe wouldn't have been a good Kohen Gadol. Specifically, Aron, if someone was more down to earth, was capable of being the Kohen Gadol, the leader, someone people were able to relate to and learn from. he was the right choice. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.